Great. So the topic I wanted to talk about tonight is self-acceptance through loving kindness. And this is inspired by a class I'm taking right now, an online class through Elephant Journal on the topic of Maitri or Maitri, which it's spelled Maitri, and loosely translated the word from Sanskrit, it means loving kindness. I think in the Pali language, you might have seen it called metta, M-E-T-T-A. It's a similar concept. And the idea is fully accepting ourselves with loving kindness. But it's not just all kind of like frou-frou and flowers and, oh, I love myself. It's in part of this, inherent in this idea is, hi,
She says hi.
Inherent in this idea is that you have to, in order to fully accept ourselves, we have to fully examine ourselves, all the parts of ourselves, even those dark, hidden, shadow, subconscious parts of ourselves that we try to keep hidden or don't want to look at. But the idea is to bring these hidden parts of ourselves to the surface and examine them, and then just accept them with love and kindness, because they're part of who we are. And those parts of ourselves are all parts of ourselves. We didn't choose how we wanted to develop, right? We didn't decide what kind of person we want to come into. Where those parts of ourselves develop as a response to the combination of our innate inherited tendencies and the environment that we're raised in and the environment that we're responding to. And so we can't control the thoughts that come into our mind or the emotions we feel, right? We don't invite particular thoughts. We don't try to think particular things, or we don't try to feel things. Those just arise within us as in response to our environment and based on our innate tendencies. There was a really great line from Sharon Salzberg, who's a well-known Buddhist teacher, that she said, we can't control our thoughts. We can't control the thoughts that arise in our mind. When the conditions come together for a particular thought to arise, then it will arise. So we can't control those thoughts. So why beat ourselves up about them, right? So this is one of the inherent fundamental concepts of this Maitri idea, that we can't control the thoughts we have. We can't control the emotions we have. So we might as well just accept them and make peace with them and process them and work with them. And I thought I could give an example from my personal life, if that's okay with you guys. It gets into some kind of personal details, which can be uncomfortable because we're raised in our society to ignore our emotions or kind of hide our emotions, right? Especially those deep, dark emotions and desires. We're taught that to avoid those and just kind of not look at them and pretend they're not there. Especially, that seems to be very prevalent in our culture, especially with the influence of Christianity. I don't know if many of you were raised with that influence, but we're taught that our inner nature is sinful and wrong, right? And we're supposed to work against that, not allow our sinful natures to come true. And that creates a lot of problems for a lot of us, right? Because we try to, instead of facing our emotions and facing our desires, we try to just ignore them and try to distract ourselves and look other ways. And that's why you see so common in the news someone who is a starch opponent of something, then they're caught in the bathroom with an underage person of the same sex or whatever. I mean, we see that so often in the news. And that's because we're taught as a society to just push those desires away, push those emotions away. Even if you have bad thoughts or bad emotions, bad feelings, it's better to examine those and be present with them and address them head on than try to just hide from them and repress them, because they always wind up bubbling back up another way, no matter what. And so I've been dealing with this in my personal life with romantic relationships and loneliness. And because I think I've talked about this before, and I've written a lot about this on Elephant Journal, there's been this overriding driving force in my life to find the one, right? This perfect relationship, the perfect partner who will make everything okay. And once I find her, my life will be complete, and I'll be complete, and it'll just be angels and fairy dust everywhere. So, right, this has been a driving force in my life, and it reminds me to rush into relationships that I know aren't right for me, or um, yeah, or even then when I get into a relationship and when the infatuation wears off and I realize the other person doesn't complete me, because no other person can complete us, that has to be from within. I mean, when that happens, then I start blaming her for not being right for me, and it's just, this has been a pattern that's played out in my life over and over again. And so I've been single for a while now, and especially here with COVID and social distancing going on, I've been spending pretty much every evening alone in my RV. And so there's very few, or I've gotten, there's very few distractions for me to rely on, right? I mean, I've gotten kind of sick of Netflix and Facebook and playing music by myself. I mean, that was working for a while, but eventually I was starting to go a little crazy, because I can't go out and be around people and distract myself. But so as I've been taking this Maitri course, it's been really helping me open my eyes to, and helping me realize I just need to sit with the loneliness, right? Just be with it. And so this past Sunday, it was a busy, productive week. I'm teaching these classes and doing a lot of work with Abby, and I went on a beautiful hike on Sunday. And so it was like this a really good week, a productive, busy week, and I was doing lots of stuff. But then Sunday rolls around, and it was like 4 o'clock, and it's raining outside, so I can't even go outside. And there's nothing more to do. And it's just kind of, it's kind of like slowing down, winding down. And then I'm just looking at the whole rest of the evening alone in my RV, and I could feel this longing building up in me, right? That loneliness starting to kind of just come up. And so, but I've been studying and reading about self-acceptance. And so I'm like, all right, this is it. I'm going to just sit with this. I'm not going to distract myself. I'm not going to reactivate my dating profiles and look at profiles for hours. I'm just going to sit with this. And so I did, I just kind of sat there and did nothing else. Just examine the feeling. And a passage came back to me from another book that I've talked about here. It's called Why Buddhism is True by Robert Wright. And he describes there the process for sitting with strong emotions, and how you can just sit with it and just let the emotions sink in, just surrender to it, and then examine it, right? And so think, like, what is the texture of this emotion? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Is it diffuse? Is it aching? And where in the body am I feeling it? Is it one particular spot, or is it throughout my body? So I was really just trying to examine this loneliness, this longing. And as I did that, I started to notice it was really focused on kind of the front of my body, along my skin. Because in particular, I was longing for that sensation of holding someone, right? Of cuddling with someone, that spooning sensation. And so that's what I was really, what my subconscious is really focusing on, like longing, feeling that sensation of holding a warm body pressed against mine. And so I just, kept going into this and just accepting this feeling, accepting this longing. And it got really intense at one point, just this full body longing for that sensation, but then also feeling that sensation that I was missing. And it got really tense. It kind of bubbled up, and then it just broke, it was like a wave building up of really intense emotion. And then it just broke and it released, and I felt better. And so it was really kind of an eye-opening experience. And since then, it's been 5 days now, I haven't had to deal with that longing again. And so I wanted to share this as a way for when I talk about sitting with emotions and going into emotions, this is the kind of thing that we have to do, right? Just fully feel these emotions and let them affect us. Because emotions, they're our subconscious trying to tell us something. It's a message bubbling up from our subconscious of something we need to look at. And if we ignore it, then it just keeps bubbling up. But if we open to it and accept it and learn what it's trying to tell us, then it can go away. Then it just flitters back into the ether instead of continually coming back and haunting us. And so, yeah, I wanted to share that. There was one thing, part of the story I forgot to talk about. I mentioned briefly about how emotions, they bubble up when there's something our subconscious is trying to tell us. And so in that last story I just shared, I talked about how I was when I dove into that feeling of loneliness, I realized I was specifically longing for the physical touch, physically holding someone. And as I kept diving into that, underneath that was this feeling that everything is okay, right? Because I have these memories of cuddling with an ex, and that feeling when you're just glowing, particularly, I don't want to get too graphic, but especially like after sex, when you're cuddling and you're just enveloped in that warm glow, right? And just feels like everything is okay and everything is wonderful and you're just soaking in that euphoria. So like that's what I was really craving, that feeling that everything is okay. But but then my conscious mind comes into play and is like, but wait a second, you had that, right? I'm thinking specifically of this one long-term relationship I had where we lived together and we that was like a common sensation, right? I had access to that commonly, but that still wasn't enough. I was still dissatisfied with the relationship and dissatisfied with life in general, right? So even when I had that thing that I'm craving so long now, that didn't fix everything. That didn't make everything okay. And so that was an important, I think, lesson I had to learn from that also. You just kind of realize that we have to balance the subconscious desires with the conscious mind. I mean, the subconscious is infinitely wise in some ways, but then kind of dumb in other ways. And similarly, our conscious mind is really smart in some ways, but then really dumb in other ways. And so we need to utilize both of them and listen to both of them in order to be well-rounded people and find peace. And so that's why I wanted to meditate on the third eye there, because like I've mentioned before, the third eye helps us see things as they really are, helps us see the truth of what we're dealing with. And so that can be, when you're caught up in a strong emotion, it can be sometimes too much to try to meditate on the heart when you're feeling strong emotions, because then you just feel that even more. And so if you want to try this exercise, it could be helpful to meditate on the third eye instead of the heart, because it's a little bit more dispassionate in some ways and helps us see with clarity and helps us understand what's really going on with us.